Hello everyone, this is FIDE Master Viktor News-Roev. Thank you for joining our workshop today. Today the topic is the Hedgehog system. I'm sure many of you are familiar with such a setup, which is called the Hedgehog. If not, then it's a good opportunity for you to learn, because actually you can force your opponent to play Hedgehog if you, for example, choose Marek Bind. Very often your opponent has to react with the Hedgehog as one of the best weapons against Marek Bind. And if you play such Sicilian lines like Najdorf, Scheveningen, Kan Sicilian, Taimanov Sicilian, then you definitely have to learn how to play the Hedgehog to make sure that you know how to withstand the aggressive Marek Bind system. Okay, fine. We are about to start soon. I'm streaming this event on YouTube. There will be the recording of this event too, so people are joining according to what I see. Please let me know if the sound and video quality are good. So actually I only see a few members. Anyway, so I'm sure in a few minutes there will be much more people. Let's see. While we are waiting for more students, please tell me about well, anything that you wanted to share about. What is the Hedgehog? So, well, it's such a system. Let me show you. When the pawns are located that way, so they form a kind of these pawns act like spikes of the hedgehog, preventing the white pieces invasion into the fifth rank, for example. Well, this is the most common variation of the hedgehog. Sometimes the bishop can be there and the pawn is on g6. This is a different setup. And today I would like to start with my game that I played against Grandmaster Diego Flores here in Argentina. We drew, but my position was better at some point. Well, my position was worse a little at first. Then I somehow outplayed him. And but then I was low on time and I was unable to realize my advantage. There was a specific way of realizing this advantage, but I just didn't find it. Not sure if I did find, even if I had more time, but the engine, of course, did find it. Okay. Okay, I see people are joining. Okay, let's start. Let's start and let me illustrate this game first. Just my own example. Can you please let me know if everything is fine and there is no delay, that my internet works well. So just to make sure that everything works perfectly. Okay, let's start. So e4 c5. I was preparing against Diego Flores, but in one of his blitz games that I found on chess.com, he played not the knight d7 strategy, but knight c6, which is not as good as knight d7. So this time he played better. So first of all, this is Marek Zibine. What's the concept of such a move? The idea is that with such a move, we stop d5 and we stop b5. However, we make our bishop worse and potentially we weaken our duck squares. So knight f6, e5 is not a possibility. This is everyone understands. Knight c3, queen c7. And in this position, in my opinion, the best move for white is a3. Why so? Because if not a3, then it can be bishop b4, which is already a problem. So for example, bishop b4 in this position isn't such a big issue. You just play queen d3 and defend everything. But in case of when the queen c7 is already played, it should be fine. It should work. Okay, so yeah, let me explain about f3 a little later. So queen c7, a3 stops it, and then it's hard to suggest a good move for black, and my analysis and actually grandmaster's experience shows that the best way is to set the hedgehog. So such moves like bishop d6 exist but are not so promising. Well, you can start with d6, but what's the point? Instead, I ask you to play b6 rapidly to continue with bishop b7 and provoke white to play pawn to f3. Because if white can somehow do quickly this strategy with rook c1, then the pawn on c4 still becomes poisoned, and with pawn on f4 they have more opportunities. With the pawn on f3 the position is more solid, but anyway, black has a counterplay. So bishop e3, bishop b7. So Diego Flores played almost the best moves. f3, bishop e7. That's right, bishop e2. This is where he castled. In my opinion, it's a little premature, but at the same time, I don't know if there is a way to somehow take advantage about castling. I just think it's just a different move order. But d6, knight d7 should be played first to make sure that you already control the fifth rank with black piece. So this is what I would do first. But castle, rook e8. So also this move surprised me. He changed the order, but I again didn't find if there was a possibility to take advantage of that. So rook c1, then he does d6. I did before, he played this move, I played these common moves. And what I want you to remember, so this is the ideal for black, the setup of the hedgehog. There are many different variations. For example, when this knight is on c6, but when the knight is on d7, it's more flexible. The knight can go to e5. Well, from c6 it can go to d5, e5 too, but from d7 it defends on b6. So, for example, in case if knight f3 is played, knight b3 is played, b6 will be vulnerable when the knight is there. When the knight is on d7, it's protected. And very often knight a4 is not enough to capture the pawn on b6. What black should be doing here? Who knows? Okay, 95, exert pressure on the C file and use duck squares. Use duck squares definitely yes, but you want to take on C4? I don't think it works. So your suggestion, it's well, I played bishop f1 move with queen f2 idea. What black should do? Attack there? Maybe. But the key idea for them is to activate this bishop, which this time can go to c7, and then they open the position with d5. That's the main strategy. Okay, let's say white plays bishop f1. Well, queen f2 just to regroup pieces, and black continues with this move. How good this move is. On the one hand, such a move attacks the pawn on c4. On the other hand, what? Just queen a2 or even knight a4 is enough. For example, what? This move. But then rook takes. If b5, rook takes c8. If rook takes, bishop takes, b5, knight takes there, then bishop takes, the rook is hanging. Maybe there is a counterplay with this move, but at the same time, white has a counterplay with knight d6. Oh, it's not the end. Rook d8. And then let's play. Well, there is bishop c5 as a possibility. F takes e4. Well, knight takes e4. This is why I don't like it. So let's just move the queen away. What do you think? Okay, or maybe instead, what else can we do in this position? Just let's retreat. Let's retreat. He retreats, and we have. Oh, we have extra piece. Do we? Yeah, we do have extra piece because knight c4 was sacrificed, and then after b5, it's the rook is hanging, so white is a pawn up, but with two pawns, two passed pawns on the flank, white should be winning. So let's go back. Knight e5, c4 cannot be captured. And actually moving the knight away means weaken the b6. So probably this knight has to go to protect on b6, but the pawn on c4 is already protected. Also, even after this move, even queen e2 becomes possible. So you can play so if you see that this move becomes really helpful. For example, you want to play knight g6 and then you think that maybe h4, h5, if the pawn is already on g3, it does make sense. I agree with you, but just attacking the pawn on c4 doesn't look like a sound plan for black. So what black should do? They should play bishop d8 and bishop c7. So my opponent started with h5 move. I played queen f2 and then he did bishop d8. So h5, well, on the one hand, when I do g3, he can undermine with h4. This is one feature. The second idea of this move is to stop me from playing g4 and chasing his knight away. Why do people play the hedgehog with black pieces? It looks like their position is so passive, but at the same time, their pieces are well prepared for opening the position. They occupy the most ideal positions. Let me illustrate. Well, for example, this, it weakens the d6. For example, it can be attacked with this move, but then bishop c7. And d5 is coming, which makes h2 vulnerable, which also creates such a threat like this, sacrificing exchange and then doing, let me do it with a different color. So this, and then doing bishop f4, you can win exchange back if you want. So this trade becomes possible, and you may combine it with some other ideas. For example, once you liquidate this rook, then maybe c4 becomes vulnerable. So there are a lot of tactical ideas once you play d5. And it's very common when you can sacrifice the pawn on d5, but activate your pieces. That's why people play the hedgehog, because they they agree to tolerate this passive position of their pieces, but at a certain moment get better coordination once the position becomes open. And I, as white, even being being 2200 player, like in 2017, 2018, lost many games here as white. I just didn't know what to do, and looks like black was prepared for every threat that I could create. If you turn the engine on in this position, it says white is better, but how to realize this advantage? Even the engine cannot. But in the end of this event, I'm going to share insight that, in my opinion, provides a white with a clear plan of how to keep small but stable advantage. So this is what I'm going to play in my next games. So, for example, when I played against Grandmaster Diego Flores, I didn't know that. Now I know. So if any of my future opponents is watching this event, watch it until the end because this is how you can get prepared. Otherwise, you have to solve problems all over the board. Okay, so bishop c7, then, for example, what do I do? Maybe this move, and then they instantly play d5, attacking h2. So sacrificing there, but attacking h2. This is Diego Flores played in a similar way. So queen f2, he did bishop d8, knight goes to b3, he did that, and this is where I just played king h1. Not the very best move. He did d5. Even now he takes without a check, but it's still sound. Knight d5, knight takes d5, pawn takes, so we traded knights. He takes on h2, the material is equal, and black's position is now better. Is this bishop trapped? No, it's not. I was, well, rook c8, bishop c8, and I was thinking about such moves like f4. Well, g3 obviously doesn't work, but f4 fails because of these, for example. Then I'm in trouble. Even he can sacrifice exchange and then take on f4 and continue the attack. Even because of that, f4 doesn't look like a good plan. I played the very best move, queen d2, which covers and threatens with f4 then. Knight f6. Okay, so d6, breaking the connection among these two pieces and relying on this pawn. He does bishop f5. And I offer the trade of this bishop. It's quite a powerful bishop here. He played bishop b7. So this is what I expected. It's not the very best move, but good. Well, we both made mistakes because the position was so complicated. Well, not serious mistakes, but small inaccuracies. We were calculating lines, we were choosing a better move. And what I can say is that it's so common that white or black makes a serious mistake. So by default, the hedgehog is considered to be favorable for white. According to the engine, it's plus 0.5, but the position is so complicated, so one single mistake may reverse the game and white will be in trouble. And this is what you'll see in our next games that we are going to cover. So b5. This is how I played. Oh, rook c1 with rook c7 idea. Well, once you play this move, well, there was something I don't like with this move. Oh, I think it's bishop d5. So they play bishop d5 and then queen d6. So I played b5. Why? Because if he plays b5, my bishop is bad. He plays bishop d5, blocking the d file. That's, well, this is what I expect him to play. But then d7. And d7 means that he may lose a material. Okay. So let's talk about what Brian suggested. So this, they play d7. And this time, knight d7. If you play queen d5, then it's bishop f4. And the rook is hanging. So you can take on d7, but after this, and this, it seems that you lose material. Even if you can save these two pieces, look at your king. Well, if you trade first, then they can take with a queen. And this is protected, this is hanging. So it doesn't really look good. No, you don't have d7 this time. So I played b5 to activate my bishop. Later in the game, I mean, after the game, Diego Flores told that that was a really good move. Now, when we analyze the game with the engine, it was actually inaccuracy. So bishop e5 was the best. I did calculate this line too, but I didn't like it. So for example, this, then what? Bishop c4, adding pressure. Well, this is what I undervalued for some reason. b5, anyway. The bishop d5, d7 works. Why does it work? So this time my rook is not on c1, so that's why it should be fine. If he takes, I just take on d5, and if he takes on e4, I take on d7. I'm a piece up, and now there is no tactics for black anymore. So d7, rook d8, bishop takes e5, queen takes e5, and knight d4. So I do sacrifice this pawn, but take the one on a6. So the number of pawns is equal. And what I like about the a6 pawn is that this pawn distracts enemy pieces. It seems that he has to play this move, for which I prepared queen e2. So if he takes, I can successfully unpin. If he moves, then of course I can unpin. For example, queen g5, knight c2. But he played h4. Rook a1, chasing the queen away, queen goes back. So again, you see the engine says all these moves inaccuracies. So I played well, and my opponent also is quite a strong chess player, but even he, in such a complicated position, made mistakes. Queen b8, queen g5. So again, inaccuracy. Why? Looks logical. I'm threatening with this. This is where he played h3, and I was sure that this is the very best move that only he could find. However, according to the engine, it's queen g3, and I thought that I'm pretty comfortable with this in game due to the passed pawn. And g3, in my opinion, was more a vulnerability. So h3, knight f5, h takes g2. So this is where I'm better, and I could play for a win, but I made a wrong decision. Well, so in this exact position, let me tell you what the engine says. +3 and 5 for white if they play a proper move. And plus 0.8 if white plays ordinary move. Which piece to take? Queen, bishop, or king? Here, your decision should be based on calculation and visualization. Okay, Isabella suggests bishop takes g2. Who else? Brian wants to take with the king. Brian, can you please specify why do you want to take with the king? To maintain the threat of checkmate on g7. And because the bishop supports a6. Okay, so what can I say? Well, capturing with the king makes sense, but with the idea to use the h file and to use the g file as well. So how should he play? That was the very best move. So it seems that he should play queen f8, which he did in the game, and then bishop b5, and then rook g1. So he moves his rook where? Maybe rook d8, maybe rook c7, which I think is better. And then after knight h6, king goes to the h7 square. Bishop d3 check. King goes to h8. I can play knight g4. And this is a problem. If he does rook d8, then I have knight e7 and rook h1. So king takes was good, but I missed it. So I took with the bishop. I thought it's more solid. And then I'm protecting there, and I can always play a4, trade the bishops, and that will help me to promote. So queen f8, rook g1, knight h7. And what do you think I should play in this position? At this moment, I was already low on time. So what do you think? We cannot sacrifice the queen. I mean, which sacrifice are you talking about? Queen g3 is suggested by John. Okay. I think it's a good move. Well, just queen e3 should be fine because you can activate the rook there, and probably queen e3 is the best move. What I did in the game, being low on time, I decided that with queen g7, I win a pawn. So queen g7, knight g7, and if he takes with the king, it's bishop h3, which allows me to win the game. That's why this is where he played this move, and I reacted with knight f5 because the a6 pawn is still poisoned. He moves king f8. I played rook d1 to chase the bishop away. He played knight f6, and I played f4. If he takes, which did happen in the game, then the pawn is still poisoned because of rook d8. Then knight e8, and I think it's a losing position for him. How do I take advantage of that? Should I? Well, let me show you. So this, knight e8, and if knight d6, he has king e7. But there was something else that I had in mind. I think here I can just move the rook. Oh no, it seems like it is a draw. Because if only I do this, he can take there, and after this move, continue with this. Yeah, it seems like a draw. So this is what I missed. I thought that the pawn is always poisoned, and I can have a chance to do something like that and win material. But he just did king e8, and now there is no checkmate. What we did is just a repetition. The king has to go back, so he cannot go there because of this. He cannot go to the d file because of a discovered attack. Oh, well, let's say king d8, knight b5. So the rook is hanging. He blocks with a rook, but after I capture it, I can promote. That's why he has to go to f8. And then we repeated the position. So I didn't know how to play for a win. That's why I just decided to fix a draw and then play in the next round. So, but king g2 would offer winning chances for me, and I couldn't figure out it because I was low on time. Anyway, at this moment, well, at this moment, I think black is already better. So I played queen d2. And after knight f6, it's a slightly better position for him. His pieces are more active. And they experience problems with the d pawn, especially if I push it forward, which somehow I managed to solve. Maybe queen h4 was better. Queen h4 in which position? Instead of
Instead of queen
taking on
d2.
g7.
Instead of queen d2.
Ah, instead of queen. Okay, good point. Let me check. I think I just lose on e3 then. So
And then
this,
you take
this.
on h2.
Yes, but then I lose on b3.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Okay, no, it's definitely not better. Anyway, well, since then I did some analysis, and today I'm going to show you how white may achieve advantage in case if black uses this setup. At least in my opinion, it's more comfortable for for white to play rather than for black, but technically you can play it for both colors. Okay, so let's talk a little about this common setup when the pawn is on f3 supporting f4. So first of all, what you need to know about it. This is a very famous setup, and people know it like how many? Well, like 50 years, for example, and it's popular the last 40 years, I think. White has space. They potentially can play on both sides of the board. They can locate their pieces differently. So king h1, then well, or bishop f1, queen f2 is a possibility, but it's not the only way to play. Black would better you set their rooks on c8 and e8 to let this bishop to get better through c7. The queen goes to b8 to not fall under a potential discovered attack on the c file. And what you should know. So f3 stops the bishop activity. The center becomes really solid. However, such a setup weakens dark squares, and because of that, there will be pressure on h2 with this maneuver. Because of that, there will be d5 and some exchange sacrifices, which are also common. Well, and well, the bishop is a little restricted, so sometimes there is knight h5. Which bothers the bishop if it comes to f4. So this is what you have to take into account. Well, I'm not sure if you are familiar, but there is a famous chess commentator. He has a YouTube channel in Russian. His name is Sergei Shipov. Well, I don't really watch his streams. I prefer watching streams of GM Sergei Makarichev because he does provide a more detailed analysis. But Sergei Shipov tells more about like, no, well, he's analyzing the moves on the surface. So I think it's good for beginners. However, I stopped watching his streams at all once he started uh, some Russian government-based propaganda. So anyway, he is famous by his book, The Hedgehog. He wrote this book in 90s, if I'm not mistaken. And that is probably when the computers were not so popular and they were not stronger than grandmasters. So that's why if you are a fan of the Hedgehog, my recommendation is to have this book, The Hedgehog by Sergei Shipov. Both players have, well, players have mutual chances in such setups. Anyway, let's continue. The next example, the game was played in 1973 between Vladimir Hort and Lyubomir Ljubojevic. This time it was a different Sicilian line, but well, it wasn't even Sicilian. It started like Benoni, c takes d4, and then transformed to Sicilian, f3 to play e4. So d6, e4, e6, and Marek bind versus This is called Shiviningen, which later transforms to the hedgehog that we are used to. Okay, thanks, John. The Complete Hedgehog Volume 1. So Rook FD1, well, just A3 wasn't played here. A3 wasn't played, and it's actually more favorable for white to not spend the tempo on A3 because very often they can play B4 and A4, and then maybe B5. So A3 is not required in every single position, but it's quite common. So Queen C7, Rook AC1, Rook C8, Bishop F1 was played. So you see, Vladimir Hort chooses approximately similar strategy to what I did against Diego Flores. Queen B8. Both sides are trying to improve their pieces, and of course, the confrontations lie ahead. Okay, so Brian suggests to sacrifice the rook on c3. Can you please specify what should happen to make this sacrifice sound? Because taking on a3 makes sense. Well, there is a complex of dark squares that becomes weak, and black can take advantage of it. But taking on c3, why is it so important? It is really good when then you can capture on e4, but when there is a pawn on f3, you almost never can capture on e4 without sacrifices. So Rook c3 is a common sacrifice against Yugoslav or English attack when the king is castled and is located on b1 and c1, but the bishop should be there. So the rook is sacrificed, the bishop adds pressure, and because of that, black has multiple opportunities to threaten the king. As for rook c3 sacrifice in the hedgehog, so I don't recommend it. I'm not familiar with any games where such a sacrifice was played. So if you know more than me, well, you can share game examples, because it makes sense if you then capture on a4, if the pawn was on a4. If there is a pawn on f3, it's very unlikely to work. Queen f2, so adding pressure on b6. Rook f e8, so he centralized the rooks and prepares to open the position with d5. King goes to h1, so similar strategy. And this time, Ljubomir Ljubojevic played this move, bishop f8, which is not such a good opportunity. But if you open the Shipov's book, you'll see that very often they do fianchetto. In my Consicilian course on Chessable, the victorious Consicilian, it's highly recommended to play bishop d8, bishop c7. And this is the most modern tendency. For example, you see Diego Flores did the same thing. And he is a GM who plays very often. So he is aware of novelties. And he plays the same strategy. Bishop f8 was played 50 years ago, 52 years ago. So it's not such a good strategy. But let's see what happens, because the white reaction wasn't so perfect. White has many options. Well, probably they should play this, and move the knight to b3. But the problem is that every time they play this, they should calculate what happens in case if d5 is played. Because the pawn is the object of the attack. So c takes this move. No, it doesn't look sound because of this, and after bishop c3 it's this. So probably you should take, then they take with a knight. You can take the knight, and then you can take on b4, something like that. d5 is vulnerable. Oh, there is knight c6 move. So not sure. Maybe, well, if you take that, you lose on a6. And this is what I don't like, because then it seems that you have to trade rooks. Well, maybe you just trade rooks, right? Trade rooks and take on b4. This seems to be good for black. They can get a draw from this position without any issues. Maybe they can play for a win after such moves like knight c5. Okay, so yeah, b4 is risky. Well, okay, what else? Maybe queen g3, maybe knight b3, but they played knight c2. What's the problem of knight c2 move? Who can tell me? Okay, so here Isabella suggests to play d5. Is it enough? So c takes, e takes, e takes, and then what? The rook, knight. Well, maybe it's time to sacrifice on c3. Let's see. But they can avoid it. Okay. So d5, c takes d5, pawn takes d5, knight takes there. Okay, maybe d5, c takes d5, you can already sacrifice. How well does it work? Let's see.
Looks like you found a way.
Yeah, well, but I think it's unpromising. Once you mentioned it, I decided to calculate because maybe you're right. It doesn't look sound, but let's calculate. So what happens here? Um, D takes d6, rook c7 maybe. Okay, so let's win this exchange. So pawn takes there, pawn takes there, knight takes, kind of a double attack, bishop d4. Well, if the bishop was there, it would be much better. Maybe bishop d6 is the best move then. G3, but G3 weakens here. Anyway, it looks okay. So H5, they can try to trade pieces first. H4, they take. Take. And no, let's not take it. Let's just play rook e1. No, let me see. Okay, so knight e3. Well, I don't see a full compensation. Some compensation, yes, but not full. So maybe still d takes e6 looks even better. So this, then takes. Yeah, this is where there is no compensation at all because you're a pawn down and no counter attack because the center is still very solid. So what should I do? I'm just debating whether I should take on b6 right away and fall under this attack or not. Maybe just this, and this. If only the knight moves, I can take there. But the knight can move there. But if the knight moves there, it's b4. Well, it's extra pawn. I don't see a compensation. So d5, no. 95 because rook c1 is blocked. Good point. So yes, you are absolutely correct. The c file is overloaded, and let's take advantage of that. Bishop captures on b6. This is what was played in the game. b3. Well, b3 protecting c4, it's common, but again, the c file is overloaded, and that gives you what? What does it allow you to do as black? b5. So exactly. b5 is logical. So thanks, Brian and Zamfir. Yes, because the knight's position is compromised. So knight c2 is not the very accurate way to play. Well, maybe they can play bishop d4 in this position, and that option would be better. But in this line, I don't really see that, well, this move. If bishop g7, maybe queen d6. But if king h8, then what? Queen h4? Okay, this time I play this move, and the pawn is protected. So I don't think that the position is favorable for white. I think black is winning. Well, not winning, but better. So that's why knight e5, attacking the pawn on c4 was a good strategy. White took on b6. Knight takes c4. So we lost our weakness on b6, but took the one on c4, opened the position, because black pieces are better prepared for opening the position. And now let's improve our other pieces. Knight goes to d7. One knight was traded, so the other one occupies a flexible position from where it can move to e5 and c5. Queen g3. So adding pressure, the rook retreats to defend there, which is not fully required, but maybe helpful in the future. They probably should bring the bishop there, add pressure on d6. So, but they played knight e3. It seems that they didn't like the position of the knight on c2 and wanted to improve. But this is a mistake. Knight b4 maybe. Maybe, but then how does black play? Maybe just rook c7, because I'm threatening with this. Well, I'm not sure that I'm fully threatening with this because there is knight a6, and this is what I have to figure out. But actually, d5 becomes a threat. Again, I should calculate it. So is it d5 right away? If d5 right away, and then I take the knight, I blunder checkmate. If I first play e5, chasing the bishop away, and then d5, I let white to capture there. So maybe instead rook c8 is a better move. Who knows? Okay, yeah, knight b4 looks good. But remember that this knight can be chased away, and then what did you achieve? However, knight a3 is much worse than knight b4. So you'd better choose knight b4. Why this move isn't so good? Who can tell me?
Looks like you play e5, and where does the
Looks
bishop
like you
go?
play e5 and where the bishop goes. Exactly. So knight f5. So what are they threatening? If now you take the bishop, then it's knight h6, king h8, knight f7, and I think they wanted to do a perpetual check. That was the concept. So it wasn't just a blunder. They had in mind the idea of a perpetual check. However, what did they miss? G6. Well, G6, they can just move the bishop away. I don't think G6 makes any sense because, well, you stop knight G6, I agree, but with G6 you don't create any threats, so they can simply move the bishop to the safe place. Maybe here, maybe to G1.
I can try rook e6 instead.
You are on the right way, but there is a more accurate way to play. So rook e6, the idea is correct. He makes this move. Oh, actually, maybe they... No, yeah, they make this move. You play rook g6, which is good. And they now have to move the queen. But what did you achieve? If the second knight goes to d5, it seems that white has some domination. However, if you start with d5, then this rook goes to g6. So, for example, pawn or knight takes, rook g6, the queen moves away, and then it's under attack. and it also stops knight h6. So that's why they played bishop g1. But after bishop g1, simply d4, and black dominates in this game. Knight d5 was possible, but after rook g6, it's bishop d5. So that's why they decided to keep this knight alive, because this is not a super good bishop at the moment. Anyway, rook g6, queen goes to e1, and black is much, much better. Why? Mainly because of the pawn structure. They didn't win a piece, but the pawn structure, especially the pawn on d4, it restricts too many pieces, and because of that, black pieces are better located. Okay, good point. How is it possible to lose, especially for such a grandmaster like Ljubomir Ljubojevic? Well, you'll see. He was doing really well. He was winning, but then suddenly made two blunders and lost. Knight c5, improving the knight, looks good. This threatens to take, so rook c6, black defense. And, well, this is where they decided to sacrifice. Well, in this position, it was interesting to try this move. How does it work? Well, if bishop takes, it's rook c7 or c5. If king takes, which is definitely better because we need to defend, then they can do this. And the whole concept here is based that on this position. King moves g8 and they win a piece on c5. Anyway, they are a piece down. So queen g5 and there is a perpetual check, but I think queen e5 and you have a bishop for 2 pawns, for 3 pawns. But black still should be winning. Maybe queen e5 isn't the best move. Actually, queen e5 can be played in this position. This is better. Once we trade queens off, it should be completely winning. Well, you may say that there is this move, but at the same time, there is queen b2, and it's also problematic for white. So knight g7, but he's sacrificed on d4 right away. How about b4? In which position? You mean after queen e5? Here. How about b4 in this position? That was a question. So what should be done here? So this or this? Let's play this move. Because if you play this, I can still trade queens, and then you also ruin your pawn structure. So I don't see any better move than h3. Oh, I'm thinking, I don't know. So maybe just rook g6, queen g3. Maybe
rook
that
8 e6.
rook
Rook 8
e6.
Yeah, they might bring the other rook down then to attack on f.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
that's why I think it's a mistake, because then you have to retreat. You cannot lose your bishop on f8.
Yeah.
Okay, so maybe after before there is a better way to play. Maybe rook g6 instead, because then queen b2 is a bit problematic.
And rook c8, did you calculate?
What for?
Rook ec8 to put pressure on the bishop?
But you are not threatening to take it. So this, oops, this, and then what?
And then take with the rook? No? One, two,
Mm,
three attackers, 2 defenders?
yes, I see, but rook d8, king g7, you mean?
Yeah, I don't
Yeah, okay, maybe. So rook d5?
Yeah, and queen b2 doesn't look that promising because now there's rook g5.
Mm,
Follow, yeah, maybe not.
yeah, so I'm not sure. To be honest, I'm not sure about it. So I would prefer rook h6 or rook g6 instead, because, well, why do I have to stick to this bishop on c5? Well, I'd better create some complications on the king side. So maybe this, and then that. And then queen b2 looks better. Or maybe rook g6 right away, because together with all this threat on g2, I have a back rank weakness. I mean, white has a back rank weakness. Okay, anyway, so that was the best way to play. It didn't happen in the game. Instead, they did that. E takes d4, bishop d4. But this doesn't work so well as knight g7 directly because there is queen c8 move. So it's protected. If now they take on g7, what happens? No, obviously you can take. So he takes on c5, and you can take on b2. And then you can always retreat in time. So winning one more pawn and making this pin more challenging for your opponent is a good strategy. And rook e5 also can be played. So fine. Bishop c3 was played, and it's completely losing after knight e6. Queen e5. So I don't know what he wants. Taking on g7 looks like it doesn't work. Anyway, f6 was played. He goes there. King h8 to not miss a perpetual check again, which black did see. H4. And this is where he started making mistakes. So queen c7. Trading queens was the best. Well, they don't have to trade. They can continue with queen g4, but it seems that we can solve this issue with this move. Bishop b4 was played, trying to trade more material. Take on c3, rook takes, pawn takes. This move fails because of rook d7. So it should stay where it is. And this is where black is still winning, but he made a blunder. What do you think? How black should play in this position?
Let's see. So knight d6 may be coming. So let's think
Knight
about that.
d6 is coming. I agree. Good point. So it looks like we need to move our queen, or we need to move our rook. Well, queen c7 was a suggestion, but queen c7, knight c7, how to deal with this move? Rook d7.
I was looking at rook g8.
No, rook g8, you fall under this. You cannot play so.
Yeah, doesn't work either.
So queen c7, this, and this is a problem because you cannot save both pieces simultaneously. If you play this, they can add pressure with one of these two moves. So choose which you like more. So it should be a rook move. Ljubojevic played rook f8. What would you play?
Rook e7, maybe. No, that's a
You
blunder.
cannot
Sorry,
play
rook
this.
d8.
Rook d8 move, of course. I don't know why he didn't choose it, because in my opinion, it's so logical. Let's trade pieces off. Knight d6 this time. What for? Just queen c7. Knight takes. Fine. Queen takes. Knight e7 to d5 looks strong, but the bishop takes. So here, queen b8, let's say. If you don't want to trade queens, you have to take on d8 first. Queen takes d8. Knight d5 now, completely no point. Well, maybe there is actually, because if I take with my queen, I lose there. And then I have to do what? Knight d8 or queen d8? No, I think it's fine, actually. You can play one of these moves. And the pawn cannot be captured, so queen b7 leads to queen
Queen
c7.
c7.
So rook d8 worked, but he played rook f8. That was a blunder. Rook d6, and now he made the next blunder. So he should play g6, trying to get rid of this knight. What he did was rook f7. What is he missing? Who can tell me? Well, rook takes d6, queen takes d6. You probably wanted to play this move, but the queen just retreats. Or the bishop retreats. What is better? Bishop retreats. So knight d6, rook e8. No, rook e6 doesn't work. So this check, but just bishop c8. And then what? Knight e6, rook f8. I'm fine. I can also block with the queen. So trade, knight d6. Who cares? Instead, it's a different move. Who knows which? So, guys, I'm also reading your comments on YouTube. So, if you want to suggest anything in this position, you're welcome. So instead of rook e6, any other suggestions based on this inaccurate position of these two pieces?
I want to play maybe like rook b6 followed by knight d6.
That's right. So how to defend against this? Because you cannot play this. You just blunder the knight. Well, you can try to trade queens, but it blunders the knight too. Yeah, so that's the problem. So probably the best move is just this, and then you lose material. So, but now white made a mistake, and the only explanation is a time trouble, because that was a period where chess players played without increment. Well, there were no such clocks that could allow chess players play with increment. That's why they had only fixed uh, time control. So, and this is move 37. And usually they had some limitation for 40 moves. For example, 2 hours for 40 moves. And at this moment, probably they had minutes or seconds. That's why they had to play rapidly. And that's why we see a lot of mistakes here. White played h5, which is a blunder. So now the position is still equal. White doesn't win. Rook b6, 39, the move number 39. And in this position, just something like queen d8 was good enough. But he played queen c7. And what's the difference? It seems that this is a good move because the queens can be traded. But then what? How white wins material?
So you have knight d6 with a checkmate threat.
So even if this is played, it's this. The pawn, the rook, this bishop is lost, after which white is a pawn up and is likely to win. Two pawn, well, Okay, this is what happened. It's just one pawn, but white pieces are better. The king has to somehow escape, but he cannot. So it's a serious problem. And later, white won the game. So you see, black lost only because of mistakes. Everything they did before was great. This is what happened. I don't think we need to pay much attention on it. So knight g8. Why knight g8? He prepares Arabian mate. Rook g5. Rooks were traded, and of course 4 versus 1, even if this is an outside pass pawn, is not sufficient. So simply knight c3 stops this. And then white starts pushing his pawns. Even if he sacrificed the knight somehow there, he should be still winning with 4 pawns versus knight. Oh, this move stops on a3. Oh, well, he could just ignore and continue pushing it, and he still stops on a2. Oh, that's it. This is where black resigned. So black played really well until a certain moment. And I want you to remember this type of the position. So the C file was overloaded. And because of that, such move like 95 with the idea of capturing on c4 was played. And there was no possibility of doing this because that would weaken the position of the knight on c3 and would allow us to play b5. So once this happened, the position became more open, and in the more open position, black pieces are better coordinated. So what you should remember about the hedgehog is that white should find a proper moment to open the game. If they do it occasionally, they can get into trouble like it happened in this game. Also, I think that white missed d5 in this position. This feature was missed. Let's continue. The game between Anatoly Karpov and Ulf Andersson, where Andersson was able to defeat Karpov. Okay, so it started like Taimanov, and this time it was a completely different setup. So I do play Taimanov, and there is knight b5 line. So here, for example, in case of that, you have to play 5. Oh, there are some lines where you sacrifice on d6, but okay, c4 was played. c4, that was a common strategy to play against Cheveningen structure, knight f6. This a6, knight goes to a3, which definitely doesn't look like a good position for the knight. But this knight is on c6, not on d7. And I'll show you how black managed to solve this issue. So they developed pieces naturally. b6 was played. Well, this pawn this time is weaker because there is no knight that defends it. Rook c1, rook e8. So, but it's still the hedgehog. Queen goes to b3, adding pressure. It's not such a common move in such type of positions, but this time it works. So knight a5, for example, leads to queen takes b6. Knight goes to d7 to defend it. Sometimes this knight can go to c5, and this trade looks favorable for black. Rook fd1, rook c8, rook d2, clever move. Queen c7 and queen d1, because in the hedgehog, white threatens this backward pawn on d6, and having the rook attacking the pawn and the queen behind is better than having the rook having the queen ahead but the rook behind. So that's why rook d2 was quite clever. However, not sufficient. Queen b8. White continued with f3, which is solid but a little passive. I have a question. What do you think? Was this move possible or not? In some conditions, especially when the knight is here, f4 is definitely possible. But in this case, it would be more favorable for black. Your task is just to figure out how, why it's more helpful for, or it's more promising for black. So the king is weak, according to the Brian's opinion. Okay. Knight c5, then knight b4. Well, knight c5 looks interesting. Maybe it makes sense. Well, what I think is that knight f6 is enough. This is weak. So if they play this move, then it's time for us to play e5, maybe. So knight d5, then we take. Why not to capture on b6? So this sacrifice doesn't look promising because of this discovered attack. But to initiate this discovered attack, you have to play this move first. So now you're attacking e4, and even if they defend it, you can still take there because at the very end you take on b6. For example, knight takes, bishop takes, you take there with a check, and the number of pawns is equal. Maybe you can then take on a2 and retreat back. Fine. Let's continue. So f4 is possible, but risky. So I do play f4, but well, I would prefer this knight to be on d4. And yes, it works against this knight, and the bishop comes to f3. If I see that I can do it quickly without any tactical strikes, without losing my pawn on e4, then as white, I would prefer this strategy. So f3, bishop e8, protecting there. Queen f1, potentially attacking this. And knight ce5 was played, adding pressure on c4. So this in this game, Karpov played this move. That wasn't the best. Probably just keeping the knight, just protecting the pawn, but adding more pressure on d6 would be a good strategy. He played this move, and he did play similar strategy against Kasparov. It worked well then, but actually, Ulf Andersson found how to deal with it. Well, so the knight was required to protect on c4. Knight f6, maybe not the best reaction, but anyway, king goes to h1, h6, rook dd1, and bishop f8. So you see, these guys liked bishop f8 strategy to fiancetta. And many years after that, after their game, this plan was considered to be the best. Now we know that this is the best. How did the pawn get back to f3? Well, it went to f3. I just suggested f4 and ask, what do you think about that position when f4 is played? In the game, it was f3. f4 was just a variation. So knight d2. Rook goes there. Queen f2, adding more pressure. The knight retreats. And it seems that now these pieces are on correct positions. Well, I would still prefer having the bishop on c7 and not on f8, but this knight is on d7, like it moved there. However, a6 is a weakness. a3. Now let's start a battle. So every time, well, why I also like the hedgehog, because black has chances to play for a win there, even when the engine shows that white is slightly better. What do you think? How to play for a win in this position? Which move to choose? Thanks, Zamfir. Can you please specify what's your main opening for black against d4? So d5 was played. If you play hedgehog, you have to like this tactical battle which appears after you play d5. So c takes, e takes, e takes. Taking means bishop a6. Taking with a knight means there is a trade and then bishop a6. That's why bishop d6. So you see, Ulf Andersson did the same plan like I usually do, or like Diego Flores did against me. But he played this move and then retreated back to d6. So which is better doing through c7. Knight f1. Well, he could activate, he could play this move, preventing this. Okay, so Zamfir, which Sicilian line do you play usually? So b5 should be played, but John, you'll see it. So now rook a3 is played. Not the very best strategy, but for a tactical battle it works. So it was better just to prepare pieces with this move. For example, this, knight g3, then you can play bishop f4 trading them, or you can just play bishop f5. It will be slow maneuvering battle, where d5 is a weakness. So I would prefer black. But rook a3 was played. Knight takes e3 and bishop takes h2. So why didn't they take with a queen? If they take with a queen, it's bishop f4, obviously, and after queen d4, bishop c1. Rook takes c1, and then b5. And this pawn is likely to be lost. But I would still prefer white here, because, well, even if they lose the pawn, the position is just equal. There is no dark squared bishop anymore. Okay, knight e3 was played. Bishop h2, knight goes to f1, bishop f4, rook c2, and b5 in this position. So bishop d3, trying to activate pieces, but knight b6 with the idea of capturing there. Bishop f4, defending on e4. So 1, 2, 3 versus 1, 2, 3, 4. But in case if you decide to take on d5, you will fall under a pin. So, for example, takes, and rook c5. The knight has to move. Rook d8, queen d8, takes, then something like that. This is where white looks better. In case if knight a8, it's the same move with the back rank weakness. So look at queen c2 move. I'm covering h7. Knight c4 was played, so that's right. a4, rook e8, take, and they played rook e2, which is too passive. Well, maybe rook a5, rook h5 sounds like a good plan, but black also made another mistake. He played this move, bishop a5. Queen c5, trying to activate the queen and attack. What happened then? Knight d6. So that, I think, is already inaccuracy, and white is better after that. What he could do is first capturing and then doing that. So this is a blockade strategy where the bishop is likely to be better than the rook, with some chances to do the attack on the king side. Well, this bishop is bad, but maybe there will be a chance to win a pawn on e4. Instead, he played knight d6 right away, and white should immediately retreat back to b1 with such a bishop. However, they did a really stupid move, knight a2. What for? I don't know, actually. Maybe they didn't want that the bishop can take and then e4 is hanging. Maybe that was the reason. Anyway, knight takes e4, f takes e4, and bishop d6 is played with a temper. And this is a problem. This is hanging, and there is also either this move or I think bishop move is better because there is a rook hanging behind. So queen c2, Seems that none of these options work, neither this nor that. But after rook e5, the dark squares are exposed. So g3, queen e8, adding pressure, rook d1, and in this position, black made another inaccuracy. Their position is still better. They just play bishop b7. It doesn't do anything wrong with the position, but at the same time, it doesn't provide black with more advantage. So what do you think? What black should play instead here? I was looking at the same. Okay, so what? Maybe knight takes d5. Mm, rook h5, queen e5. Interesting. Rook h5, queen e5 is quite interesting. 5. So how do they play? Move their king, then queen e5. The knight should go back. So there is no bishop c5, by the way. So you are not threatening with anything at the moment. Let's talk about knight d5 instead. So knight d5, pawn takes, trade. No, quite unlikely. So bishop c5. No, bishop d5, definitely. So king moves. This, no. Bishop a2, maybe. Bishop a2, then it's this. And after bishop takes, there is what? Maybe there is b3 move.
I'm not sure, right? You have the bishop check, then the queen gets in. I mean, you can even distract the
Well,
queen
well,
with
well, well, it's not so easy. How do you get rid of the pin? And this bishop is trapped.
you get rid of it with a check.
But then two bishops are, only one bishop is hanging. So king h2. And you save this bishop. How? Well, to d4, because if you save it somewhere else, like g5, let's say, then it's this. Well, maybe white is not winning, but definitely better, and white is playing for a win. So, but the bishop can go to d4, and this is how this move becomes impossible. But I don't really need to move a pin. I just need a move that allows me to capture the bishop. So it can, for example, be this. And then I don't see a better move than this. And then I still prefer the white's position, but maybe just bishop f6 and you have a fortress. Yeah, looks like it's a
Could
draw.
be a draw.
Yeah, it's a draw. Well, if this pawn existed, then maybe not, but okay, maybe maybe I just made the wrong move. Let me see. Yeah, king h2. So let me do this. Then you cannot get rid so easily, and two pieces are, well, both are problems. You can probably play with this move and then queen c5, but the other bishop is lost. Okay, so should be enough to draw the game actually. So looks like knight d5 works, but only allows to draw the game. Is there a better way to play?
maybe knight g4, cutting off some squares.
There is knight e4, which is better. Why so? So they take bishop d5 pin, and it's a deadly pin. Looks like knight c3 helps, but who cares? Just this. Every time the knight moves, it's over, and I'm going to play a f5 move. So how you can avoid it? G4 is a possibility, but then f5 anyway. So g takes f5, simply rook takes f5. Look at the king. It's so exposed. It's likely to be a winning position. At the moment, black is down a rook, but with such a, well, I can always win exchange back, and also the king isn't such a danger. So b4 is coming, for example. Let's do what? Make a king's move. Queen g6. Knight g3, queen g3. Queen g2, rook g5. King h1, rook h5. Knight h2, take it. So, and then after this move, it's winning. So, for example, b4, and I take it. So g4 doesn't work. Maybe it's better just to move the king away and then pin, but how? So king h2 or king g1. So let's start with king g1. Then it's bishop c5. And if let's say knight e3, then bishop f4, knight takes e4, and well, if I take, I lose there. Oh, but I can just play this move and take on e4 later, because if the knight moves, I still win a piece, and I am already 2 pawns up. Okay, so maybe we should move the king to h2 to get rid of that problem. However, if so, it's rook h5. And then what? King g1, it's bishop here. King g2, f5. And the rook is 1 for free. So that was the best strategy. Just a knight capture, which would lead to a deadly pin, and black would win the game. But he played bishop b7. Maybe he didn't visualize something there. King g1, knight h7. To regroup the knight goes there. So having in mind these two squares, knight d2, bishop b4, so threatening with this. King goes to f2, but this move anyway. And finally, it's knight e4. And this is how black wins material back and ends with extra pawn. So rook c8. Well, knight d4 is a slightly better move, but knight c3 was played in the game. It looks logical. And what would you suggest? Where the rook should move? b4 first. When b4 first? Okay, looks like I missed your comment. Rook a1 maybe. Rook a1 was played in the game. No, rook here. Why rook here? Because there is, for example, if they take, then you have bishop f5. Or rook f5 even. Yeah, you do have rook f5, and then you can bring the queen to the attack, like queen e3, queen e1. King goes there. Then probably this is the best option. Well, anyway, it looks like a strong attack. So rook a1 was played, knight e2, looks like he broke the connection between these two pieces, but simply rook a1. And black is a pawn up, but the main advantage comes from the enemy king's weakness. Rook d4, queen d8, so threatening with this or this, but don't forget about the bishop. So queen c6 was played, bishop d7, queen d6, queen e8. Here, And after this move, just bishop h3, threatening with rook f1. He did that move. Rook f1 still seems like a good move. King goes e3 and then bishop f5 works. But he started with bishop f5, so it could make sense to force the enemy king to go to the open position, such as e3. Well, queen e3, queen c2, well, technically it's a winning position. Black just had to play accurately. Adding pressure, d6, and just rook a3 would be fine, but he played rook a8 move, attacking through the other side. Rook a4, bishop c6. Well, why did he play queen d4? He offers a trade. Queen b1, this is vulnerable. The rook goes to e7, so maybe that was a better move. The rook goes to e7 anyway. And then rook a1 would lead to a win with such ideas like queen f3, queen f1, rook a3, and so on. But he played queen h1, which is logical too, queen f4, queen g2, and now he brings the rook to the game. So this is good, but queen d5 probably is better. Queen d4, check. So here it's an interesting position. So something like this or that leads to rook e2, after which the queen is lost. So that's why they have to move their king to there, to c3, to defend the queen. But then it's queen f3, this, and rook a3. This. And then this is a threat. So king goes to e1, queen h1, this, queen g2 again. So he repeated, I don't know what for, but finally he did what he should do earlier, and rook f1 becomes a mating threat. This was played, queen g2, king escapes, and finally queen e3. This is where he resigned. Why? Well, because after this only move, it's simply rook a2, and he loses this. Moreover, I think the game would end in a checkmate in a few moves. Would the trade of the queens be fine? Yes, I think it still would be winning, but it would be much harder to win the game then. I'm sure that such a strong player like Ulf Andersson would definitely defeat Anatoly Karpov in such an endgame because, well, if you look at the position, his bishop is better than the knight. The bishop may blockade the pawn while it's possible to advance these pawns, and the king is quite close. So I think he would defeat. But why not to exploit the king's weakness? And the king weakness, it's better to it's better to exploit the king's weakness with more pieces on the board, especially with queens. So what did happen? So what I want you to remember from this game is this move d5. So this move typically helps you to change the type of the position from being passive. You can get your pieces activated and create serious threats, especially to the pawn on h2 and maybe through the e file as well. But there are a lot of nuances, and chess players mainly play this hedgehog because it's too complicated and everyone can make a mistake. So in this game, for example, you see many moves were marked like inaccuracies. Even strong GMs couldn't play their best because it was very hard to take a proper decision. Now we are coming closer to the end of our event, but you remember I promised to share an insight, my own analysis, which shows a clear advantage for white in these variations. Well, according to my analysis, according to my opinion, and to well, the engine agrees there is some advantage, but in my opinion, it's difficult for human to play it. It's black, but understandable for white. Anyway, if you like these events and you would like to support my work, I kindly appreciate any donations which can be done here using these links. For example, through PayPal, you can just click this button, donate, and then enter the amount that you want to donate, click this PayPal button. It redirects you to enter your PayPal account, and then you send this money automatically to my account. There is the second way to donate. You can use Wise. Just if you have Wise, well, I still recommend you to register it. It's a very helpful electronic payment system with lower commissions. So you can use this link and then send money to me. That would help me to plan my workshops better and better prepare material. So now there will be insight. By the way, what I want to tell you, I'm going to publish the recording of this event as well as PGNs in a separate post on chess.com in my blog, but I'm not going to share a PGN of this analysis, of this insight, of this novelty that I created. This will be available only for viewers of this workshop. Well, and you can also find it in the on the recording of the event, but there will be no PGN analysis. So try to understand what I'm showing. There can be no second chance to learn it. This is what I'm going to play myself in the very next game that I'm likely to reach. So, especially against Khan Sicilian. Knight c3, queen c7, so I play a3. The best strategy is doing b6 and doing the hedgehog. So this is our standard setup. And what did I prepare here? So b4, of course, rook ac8, queen d2, rook f8. These are basic moves. And if you remember, against Diego Flores, I did king h1 and bishop f1. Well, bishop f1 with queen f2 and king h1 ideas. This time I have a better suggestion. I want to play c5. To prepare this move, knight b3 should be done. Do I blunder this pawn? Absolutely not. I don't think that he can take it. If he tries this, there is knight a4. What I expect to happen after knight b3, typically people play this move. Well, the idea of this move is obvious. It's not a blunder. If queen d6 is played, then the queen has to retreat and the h2 pawn is lost. So the position becomes more open. Black bishops are more powerful. Of course, I'm not going to take on d4, d6 with my queen, but I would like to take on d6 with my bishop. And in case if he does bishop c7, I take and win a pawn for free, trading bishops. That's why black should stop it. What do you think? How black should stop it? Bishop e7, please don't suggest it. I just take on d6 anyway.
e5, giving up d5.
e5, giving up the control over the d5 square. That's right. So how to play in this position? Well, even this makes sense, but let's just go back. So the d5 is weak, and what I like about it is that this bishop is terrible then. And there is no this breakthrough, which means that the black's counterplay will be limited. Every time this move is played, it's just a pawn blunder with no counterplay. So that's why e5 doesn't work. But knight e5 works. Yes, knight e5 works. However, for knight e5, this time I prefer to take this and focus on creation of a passed pawn. How to play c5 right away? Well, it's definitely a possible strategy, but queen e3 is a better way to play. Those of you who like playing like Diego Flores, so h5 for example, may fall under this trap, which was never played at GM's level, but is highly appreciated by the engine. So this idea looked good for me by the first glance. Then when I checked it with the engine, it was fine. Okay, so before we continue with that, let's talk about knight h5, which is promising according to John's opinion. Okay, how does knight h5 make sense? Okay, John, what if I play knight a4, threatening to take there? You probably knight f4, but then just bishop f1. How do you defend it? Because the idea is that you probably wanted this move, but for this move, I prepared b5. Take, and then you have to defend b6 with all your pieces. And I think that you even lose it. Because here, I take it. I'll show you. So this. If you take, I take with the queen, and there is no discovered attack because I trade queens. If you start it right away, there is knight d7 move, and then I take your bishop. So, well, maybe you go that way, but if you go that way, there is this, and knight b6. So yeah, so knight h5 is a common move, but looks like b6 is a weakness. And knight d7 is not possible because the d file is open. So they have to play accurately. So h5 doesn't work here. H5 doesn't work here, neither h5 nor knight h5. For example, h5 doesn't work because of this sacrifice. So rook takes, queen b6. Sacrifice in exchange, but these pawns, these are the main power. h4, h3. This time knight h5 looks good. c5. Knight f4, bishop f1. Knight g3, bishop c4. And I'm going to advance pawns further. Okay, maybe it was better to take on d8 with the other rook. Still queen b6. Rook c6. Fine, queen retreats. Well, no. Let me retreat to e3. h4, c5, then I do this, and what do you do with your pieces? I am sacrificing exchange for just one pawn, but how do you stop my pawn storm? I think I will remember it, of course. This is the third time I'm repeating this line with you. So once happened when I developed it, second when I was repeating it before my classical tournament, and this is the third time I'm repeating it with you. So yeah, of course I will remember. If I don't remember all the moves, at least I will remember. Yeah, there is 95 idea. At least I will remember the main ideas. So what's the concept? Actually, so neither h5 nor knight h5 or anything else works. Bishop c7 is the main move. And if I were playing this position against Diego Flores, I'm sure this is what he would play. And for this move, I prepared this, c5 right away. My second idea is knight a4. Oh, and if this move, then b5. But c5 is the main thing. So, well, I'm going to take. So takes and knight takes. And I neutralize the bishop. I have my dark squares weakened, but I can neutralize the bishop, for example, by doing that way. Let's get rid of a pin. This, trade, queen c3. So this is what I don't really need to remember. I just need to understand what's going on here. So I have a pawn majority on the side. Well, these pawns are really good, but they are good in terms of the black's ability to control the center. But this time, the whole place of action is focused on the queen side. And yes, a6 is a weakness. Once I win the pawn on a6, I think it's game over. Who can stop these pawns then? So rook c8, protecting on a6 indirectly. Then, well, queen b2 is a possibility. Queen d2 and rook d8, then queen b2, attacking this. So it's not a winning position. It's just a small and stable advantage where black is likely to experience issues. So this is my preparation against black. If you also play Marok the Bind against many Sicilian lines, you are likely to get this position too. Well, you are likely to get this position. And from there, you can remember this idea of taking on a5 and trying to advance the pawn to c5. This was never played in Masters games. Let me see. I mean, bishop f4 move was played a lot. Knight a5 was played too. Bishop takes a5, d takes a5. And queen a3 was played once. No, several times. Bishop c7 was played once, but nobody played c5 in this position. So that is a novelty. Oh no, it was such a game. So it was b5 played, and white continued with a4 and won the game. Yeah, a4, b takes a4, knight takes a4, bishop c6, knight b6, and this is a better position, definitely. a6 is a weakness. So it was bishop a4 played, but just bishop a6. What's the purpose? Take. So if take, it's queen b6. So that's why here it should be played bishop c8. But bishop c8, we are winning here. So rook c8, then rook c8, queen c8, queen b3, it's winning. So bishop d1.
B7, why not? You looked like you were calculating it.
Yes, I'm calculating it. So b7, and I'm a piece down, but look at this bishop. So if bishop goes that way, it's this. So bishop a4, it's even queen b6. And then this. So the queen doesn't escape. So knight d7, for example. Then the bishop doesn't escape. So look at how how passive these pieces are. Okay, fine. So that was inside, and if you are going to implement it in your games, I would love if you can share your results and share these games with me. You can send them to tricksofchess@gmail.com, or maybe just send me a private message on chess.com. Or during the next workshop, you can just send me a private message here in Zoom. What move number was queen e3? Queen e3 was move number 19. The vast majority of chess players here play h6, after which c5 was played several times, but for this position I prepared rook d8, similar to h5 move. So this, knight d7, queen e3 back. This is my plan. If I know that my opponent plays Khan c7, not a man of c7, it's likely to happen. Khan, Sicilian, and Scheveningen. Okay, fine. So thank you for coming. Hope to see everyone next Sunday at our next workshop. Do you have any questions? Okay, if not, then thank you and see you next week. Bye bye.